So this is stippling and scumbling. We start off by drawing the two 1-inch bars just like we did before over here. So the easiest way that I know to do it, I line up my ruler with the edge. I draw a line on both sides of my ruler. And since I want 1 inch, if I take my ruler over and I share that same center line, this will make things really easy for me. So now I have two 1-inch bars that I'm going to draw in. I want to go ahead and label that. This first one is going to be called scumble. S-C-U-M-B-L-E. And then that's going to be in here. So this one is going to be called stipple. And then the last word that I want to define is a gradation, because I use that word a lot. So a gradation is a gradual change. So we're going to scumble, stipple, using the technique of gradation, creating a gradual change. And the example of gradual change we've done so far is our cross-hatching. Our cross-hatching is a gradual change from dark to light. With our hatch and our tonal, they are not gradation, they are not gradual changes. There are definite lines in between each that's showing us what each individual box looks like. So on scumble and stipple, we're going to do it more like we did with cross-hatch. And so I'm going to go ahead and show you both techniques and then kind of let you just run wild with it. So you have one of the roller ball pins. And so I'm going to grab this one, and I always want to test my pin first, right? I don't want to just go right into it. So I'm going to test it, make sure that it's working properly. For scumbling, I'm going to do the same concept as crosshatch. It's going to go from dark to light. The idea, again, is if you put more material, more ink in one spot, it's going to be darker, and then as it advances out, there's more space around it. So scumbling is controlled scribbling. And I'll zoom in so you can see. Let me kind of go this way. It's controlled scribbling. Notice how tight my little scumbling is happening. I think it even matches the word, right? Scumble. I'm just kind of scumbling across the surface. I'm overlapping, and I'm just real tight little squiggles, just real tightly creating darkness. And I go right to my very edges, and I try not to get too patterned. So I try to make some jut out a little further, some get a little tighter. I come back on itself, but you can kind of see it's really controlled, chaotic scribbling. And I never need to pick up my pen. It's just this continuous line. And what I'm trying to do is I'm looking at my cross-hatching actually, and I'm trying to kind of match that value. So as I'm going, and I'll even just do it in a small section here, notice how if I start to leave more space in between just this little individual line, you can kind of see how my line dances around. How it starts to get lighter if I allow more space. That's the technique of scumbling. It takes a little patience. It's going to fill the entire space across. The other technique I want to go ahead and show you is called stipple. The idea of stipple is that you're going to have to use a marker or something with a felt tip to give you a larger dot, or else you'll be there for a very long time. So I'm just going to grab a Sharpie so that you can see it. The reason I didn't give you a Sharpie, and I'm going to be very blunt about this, the Sharpies are more expensive markers, and you can make a lot of mistakes doing this. You should never hear your marker during stipple. So with stipple, my hand never leaves the paper, so my hand is resting firmly against the paper, and I'm just going to let the marker itself just touch the surface. As I do this, it creates dots. The further apart the dots are, the lighter the value is. The closer the dots, the darker the value. So as you can tell, it's going to take a lot of dots. Do you really want to put dots all the way across the paper? I don't. So my thoughts on this, let's make this one only go halfway. So about halfway, go ahead and try to stop it like right about in the middle, right about here. So we're going to go from dark to light using gradation, here to here just using dots. So what I can do out here is I can add just a couple dots to kind of get it started. Try really hard not to create a pattern. Try to be as random as possible. That's the magic or the power behind stipple, is to be random. You don't want to create lines. So even here it kind of starts to create a line and our eye starts to follow that line. So I'm going to come back with another layer to kind of start to make it darker. Notice that my dots don't have tails, so you don't want to have any taily dots. The way to get away from that is to make sure when you touch your marker that you touch it and pick it up, touch it and pick it up. You don't want to touch and go forward or backward. That's going to create tails, so avoid tails. The more dots you add, the darker the value gets. Try to be as random as possible. As you can see, this is much darker, this is medium, this is light. So I'll keep adding dots back at the darker end and fading them out. Please try to fill at least half of your row and try to make it a true gradation. That's a gradual change. We should not ever hear your markers. You don't want to pounce down really hard on them. You'll damage that soft felt tip, and instead of being a nice sharp point, it'll end up being a big flat edge. If you notice, the longer you hold your marker on the surface, the larger the area is that it covers. So you want to be very consistent about the length of time that the marker is touching the surface. So if you notice with stippling, I kind of do both at the same time. I started at my darkest area, I then extended that out and did some of my lightest area, and now I'm going to try to kind of meet in the middle and match the two together. So I'm starting to allow a little bit more white space to happen, and I'm trying to be as random as I can. If I start to see lines or shapes up here, I'm going to try to break away from that. It's really hard for humans to be random. We like patterns. We like things that make sense. So as it's kind of bouncing around, try not to create lines. If your marker starts to give out on you, please go just grab another marker. You don't have to wait on me. So if your marker quits behaving, if it starts to die on you, just go grab another one. They're in the drawer that says markers. So you can see a couple of my little mistakes where it starts to create like lines. So right there it kind of creates a line, right there it kind of creates a line, and I'm trying real hard to be random. The reason I didn't create a line to stop at is because I didn't know how far out I would need to kind of let the dots kind of grow to be light value. So I'm having to extend mine a little further. You can create some really cool effects using this technique called stippling. Another way people call this is pointillism. I don't have any. Okay, that's fine. Yeah. So I would say that's a pretty happy example of stipple. That one's complete. So if yours does anything similar to that, you're gold. Whatever color you have is fine. And sometimes my hand gets a little crampy, so that's why I like doing stipple and scumble together, because I can switch back to scumble at any time. Or if my marker starts to act a little bit weird, I'm not just stuck with the one thing. And with scumbling, it really is just chaotic mark making, but it's controlled, right? So this is scribbling, this is scumbling. Hopefully you can see the difference in that. So I'm very controlled that I'm staying within my area. I'm not just going back and forth and going, I'm scumbling. That's not scumbling, that's scribbling. There is a difference. And as you kind of extend your lines out, it will start to create a lighter value. So notice how tightly I was winding the shapes in the beginning. Now I'm kind of stretching that out to create lighter values. These are all ways to create value, to create the difference in light and dark. So seeing how that line extends out. That gives you 5 different ways to be able to create value. And 3 of these are examples of gradation because it's a gradual change from light to dark or dark to light. 2 of these are stepped scales. All of these are value scales. They all show a range from light to dark. So all 5 of these are value scales. 3 of them are gradations. 2 of them are stepped scales. If you can master these techniques, you can pretty much do anything.